This is the story of the greatest playoffs in the history of the National Football League. The 2014 playoffs, specifically inside the National Football Conference, was all but natural. Some of the most memorable games in the past decade occurred during these 6 games. It all starts with the 7-8-1 Carolina Panthers, who were lucky to even sneak into the playoffs. They would go on to beat a number 4 seeded Arizona Cardinals, who were a great team but had lost Carson Palmer towards the end of the season due to injury, which proved to epitomize their demise. Some would consider the Panthers rather fortunate to win that wildcard game against the struggling backup quarterback, but this was nowhere near as weird as it was going to get. The other wildcard game featured the number 3 seed Dallas Cowboys coming off a great 12-4 season, going up against the 5th seed Detroit Lions. This would start the trend of the last-minute bad calls / bad luck, and one team would always end up getting screwed. Recall the Lions essentially had the game in the bag. They led the entire game, and then a rightful pass interference call was called, as the defender is seen with his back to the ball, face guarding the receiver, as well as tackling him to the ground. The flag was then picked up, as well as no penalty being thrown for Dez Bryant running onto the field with no helmet to argue with an official. This forced the Lions to punt instead of picking up 30 yards worth of penalties and leading to a score. Tony Romo would then complete a touchdown drive, and the Lions would end up fumbling twice within the last 2 minutes, which ultimately ended their hopes of a first Super Bowl. Calvin Johnson would retire a year later. The Cowboys would breathe a sigh of relief, but little did they know what would happen the following week in Green Bay, Wisconsin. But before we go there, recall that the Carolina Panthers barely snuck into the playoffs and probably shouldn't have beaten the Arizona Cardinals. They would now travel to Seattle, where the defending champions Seahawks would put them in their place, rightfully so. But over in Green Bay, the most famous catch that wasn't a catch would be known as the only reason Tony Romo would never make it to the Super Bowl. The Cowboys had set up the game-winning drive, going for it on 4th and 1, with a bomb downfield to Dez Bryant, who catches the football, proceeds to enter the end zone for a touchdown. It was ruled a touchdown on the field, but would be reviewed and wrongfully overturned. This would allow Aaron Rodgers to make a few conversions to seal the deal. The Cowboys ultimately got screwed after getting a lucky win the previous week. Are you starting to see the trend? If not, you should surely recognize it once I mention the infamous 2014 NFC Championship. The Packers would travel to Seattle to attempt to take down the upcoming dynasty Pete Carroll was trying to create. The Packers were rolling, jumping out to a decent lead. Russell Wilson threw 4 picks in the first half alone. The Seahawks could not score, and they could barely stop the pack. The Packers would go on to win and face the Patriots in the ultimate showdown of number 12s on the grandest stage of them all, Super Bowl 49 in Glendale, Arizona. At least that's what I thought would happen. On this play is when everything started to change. The Seahawks were down 16-0. On a fake field goal, A.J. Hawk over-pursues John Ryan instead of dropping into coverage to disrupt the touchdown pass. This is where everything started to shift towards the Seahawks, or so I thought. With 5 minutes left, the Packers would have a 19-7 lead, still looking like a promising victory, especially since Russell Wilson just threw his 5th interception of the game. A questionable mistake would occur in the interception return. Morgan Burnett would slide down, forfeiting at least 20 yards of field position, which would be a factor in helping Wilson. The Packers would punt, and when Wilson wouldn't have such a long field to drive, Russell would run it in for a touchdown with 2 minutes to go. The Packers were winning 19-13. The only chance the Seahawks had would be to attempt an onside kick. There was a less than 20% chance to recover an onside kick in 2014 when the other team was expecting it. The Packers had their hands team out there, ready to recover the ball. Brandon Bostic, an NFL tight end, who was expected to know how to catch a football coming at him through the air, decided to try his best. But Brandon actually thought it was a better idea to drop the football and give the Seahawks another chance. What a nice guy, right? I don't remember ever being this mad at watching a football game, and I'm not a fan of either team. The Seahawks had played so poorly, but they would not give up. Richard Sherman had also suffered a pretty bad elbow injury, and he would power through. But still, the Packers had a lead, and one stop equals game over. But sure enough, Marshawn Lynch would be himself, getting into the end zone. The Seahawks had to go for 2 to make it a one-score game, and this is where I knew the Seahawks were destined to win. I watched Russell Wilson roll back 20 yards, throw off his back foot, back across the opposite side of the field whilst getting hit by a defender. Some of the deadly sins of quarterbacking. The ball's in the air for 3 seconds, then Pro Bowl safety Clinton Dix says, haha, let's make this interesting, as I will watch this backup tight end catch an easy 2-point conversion instead of jumping and giving an effort to stop it. But nonetheless, Aaron Rodgers had a minute to win it. He did his job. Mason Crosby did his job, nailing a 48-yard field goal to force overtime in this incredible game. I remember sitting on my couch saying, whoever won the coin toss was going to win the game. And sure enough, the Seahawks would win the coin toss. And I remember texting my friend right before this next first down play happened. I told him the Seahawks are going to win. Very next play, Wilson fires a 40-yard pass to a Jermaine Kearse, who had one of the worst days receiving of his NFL career. But he had made the catch that would send the Seahawks to the Super Bowl for a second year in a row. There will never be another game quite like this. Russell Wilson became the only quarterback to throw 5 interceptions and win in a playoff game. He also cried at the end of this game. This would not be the last time we see him cry. So, it was February 1st, 2015. The venue is Super Bowl 49 inside the University of Phoenix Stadium. The Seahawks were trying to prove to Tom Brady what they had proven to Peyton Manning the previous year. And to add more tension, they were trying to be the first team to repeat as champions since Brady did it 10 years prior. This would turn out to be an instant classic. Brady would face a 10-point deficit in the fourth quarter, which would end up being the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. Until, But nonetheless, we all know what would happen. Russell Wilson and Marshawn Lynch would drive all the way down the field for the game-winning touchdown. As I was making this video, I almost forgot about this most unforgettable play in NFL history. An impossible lucky catch. Shades of 7 years prior in the same stadium when David Tyree would make the helmet catch. But, nonetheless, one final yard for Marshawn Lynch, and the rest was history. The Patriots' front 7 were clearly exhausted, and everyone in New England was hoping for a miracle. Their miracle came in the form of an undrafted rookie free agent by the name of Malcolm Butler, who would make the play of a lifetime to seal a 24-28 Super Bowl victory. Tom Brady would become immortalized a few years later, and Malcolm Butler would end up watching his team lose to the Philadelphia Eagles as Bill Belichick refused to let him play. He would later be traded to the Tennessee Titans. As for the Seahawks, they still have not made it back to the NFC Championship, and nowadays they are in rebuild mode. In 2017, they did not make the playoffs for only the second time in the past 8 years. This is the story of the greatest playoffs in NFL history. Is the NFL rigged or scripted, much like World Wrestling Entertainment? I think not. Nobody could write a better ending to every one of these games. Each team barely getting by, breaking the hearts of their opponents, only to get their dreams crushed the very next week. There's never been a playoffs like this one, and there never will be. That is why it'll forever be deemed as the greatest of all time. Do you agree? Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. This has been Swagner17. Deuces.